Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to the first of many weekend previews of the 2023 Formula 1 season, and of course it's the first Grand Prix of the season, the Bahrain Grand Prix. Thank God we are here after what has been, how many months? Just over 3 months? I think 3 months and 2 weeks since the last Grand Prix of 2022. And yeah, cannot wait to get this season started. We've got some very interesting storylines just for this first Grand Prix, never mind for the season. And I cannot wait to get another F1 season kicked off here on the channel. Great to see you guys, as usual, in the chat and in the comments section as well. Hope you're all doing well, no matter what time it is in your part of the world. I hope you're all having as best a day as possible. And yeah, in tonight's preview, we're just going to keep it, I think, nice and simple. We're going to go through all the teams, of course. I'm going to get into how I think they'll do this weekend in Bahrain. Also, during the stream, I'll get into some data from testing to give us a bit of a better idea as to how the pace was, or the performance comparison was between all of the teams. I will be getting into that during the stream tonight as well. And I will make sure to show on screen my full qualifying and race predictions for this weekend's Bahrain Grand Prix. For qualifying, I've done a prediction for all 20 drivers. For the race, I've only done a prediction for the top 10. Really, because I think, all we care about really is who finishes in the top 10 rather than everyone outside of the top 10. And, we'll be getting into that during the stream and going, obviously, through team by team. And I'll make sure to, I guess, mention during stream, once I obviously show my predictions in, say, 20, 30 minutes from now, I'll try and explain a bit when I go through the teams why I think they're going to have the weekend that I think they're going to have. And yeah, that's what the, I guess, tone of the stream is going to be and the preview itself. And yeah, that's going to be tonight's stream. Probably not going to be live, to be honest, for too long. I don't want to be going super over this evening because, I just want to get through the stuff that you guys obviously want to see. And I think we'll just get absolutely straight into it and start, of course, with the world champions and easily the best team on the grid. And that is, of course, Red Bull Racing. And yeah, Red Bull, they are going to easily dominate this weekend. I think qualifying is the best chance for a Ferrari or a Mercedes or even an Aston Martin to seriously compete with Red Bull. But if Red Bull, they lock out the front row, which, as I'll show, not too far from now, I do think they'll lock out the front row in qualifying. Then I think they win the race and finish first and second by a very comfortable margin as well. I think Red Bull have easily got the best car here. I know Ferrari have been saying, it could be closer. I don't know, plenty of people out there are saying it is going to be closer because Ferrari didn't show quite their full potential or as much of their full potential as maybe Red Bull did. But yeah, I just think Red Bull have absolutely got the best car for this weekend's Grand Prix. And as long as they deal with qualifying well and get, the result they should get, which is still first and second, I think that's really what they will be aiming for, the Red Bull team in qualifying. I think that'll be really a job well done. And like I said, in the race, I think they'll easily be the best team, and I think actually will be at their strongest in the race itself, which will be pretty scary for the other competing teams. But Max Verstappen, of course, he did not do the final day of testing last week, and the fastest time done in testing was done by Sergio Perez. And that's, with Perez being as quick as he was on the C4 compound, and he was, 7/10 of a second quicker than the quickest Ferrari of Charles Leclerc during testing on the same compound. Even though I think Ferrari have got a bit to gain still, and I don't think they showed as much of what they can do, at least over a single lap, as much as, say, Red Bull did. Again, Sergio Perez did that best lap, when we know Max Verstappen could probably go 3-4 tenths of a second quicker, if not even quicker than that. So yeah, I think Red Bull, I'd be very surprised if they don't win the Grand Prix this weekend. Very, very surprised indeed. And I think, the gap between them and Ferrari, saying qualifying, who I think, Ferrari will be the second best team in qualifying. I think the gap from, say, Max on pole to the quickest Ferrari will probably be about 0.6 of a second, I think, at best, for Ferrari. I can't see Ferrari getting within half a second of Max Verstappen. I just don't see that happening. And then obviously in the race, the Red Bull should be much faster than the Ferrari car. We saw that during testing in the long runs. The Red Bull was quite a bit quicker than the Ferrari on the longer runs. So yeah, as long as Red Bull get the job done in qualifying, I think they win easily this weekend. And realistically, I don't think Sergio Perez will fight with Max. I know Max has never won this Grand Prix before, but I think there's nothing really that can stop him this weekend, other than what happened last season, which was a fuel-related issue with his car, which caused him to retire from the race. I think that's the only thing that could possibly stop Max in Bahrain this weekend. But let's go on to the Ferrari team, who, could be, if, let's say, they are from a, and it would certainly be from a surprising aspect, let's say they are properly on terms with Red Bull. Yeah, in qualifying, Ferrari, maybe, if they are, say, 4-5 tenths of a second closer to Red Bull than I think they are, maybe they could get pole position, and maybe then could be, serious race win contenders. But I don't think Ferrari have the type of car that they're teasing to the media. I just don't see that whatsoever. I think they are a bit closer to Red Bull than, a second per lap. I don't think it's quite that type of gap between the two teams over a single lap, at least. I think it's closer, probably over a single lap, to half a second off. Like I said a few moments ago, Red Bull, I think it's probably, for this weekend's race, probably about 6, maybe 7 tenths of a second at the absolute most. But, if Ferrari are going to win this weekend in Bahrain, a circuit that, of course, they've always been very successful at. They won the first Grand Prix here, of course, in 2004. And in the last 6 years, they've won this Grand Prix, 3 times? And probably should have won in 2019 as well. So, yeah, it's been a great Grand Prix for Ferrari, but I don't see them delivering, say, what we saw this time last season, where, of course, they got pole position, had, I think, pretty clearly the better car compared to Red Bull, and of course ended up getting the 1-2 because of the double DNF at the Red Bull team. And yeah, if Ferrari are going to win this weekend, they have to get pole position. If they don't get pole, they're not winning the race. There's absolutely no way. And I know people may say that, well, what if Red Bull have a double DNF again? I don't think Ferrari are necessarily the team that would pick up the scraps, because again, if you look at the long run data that we looked at in the pre-season testing review, which was on Sunday night, make sure to go check that out, by the way, if you want to hear a bit more of how the performance was, in my view, coming out of testing. I think there's a link below in the description for that stream, so yeah, make sure to go check that out. Yeah, I think if you look at the long runs, they are seriously off the pace. Not just compared to Red Bull, but I think once Mercedes and Aston Martin properly, say in the first couple days of the race weekend, optimize their car, I think in race conditions, Mercedes and Aston Martin will probably be faster than them. And yeah, I think even if Red Bull had a nightmare of a race again, like they had this time last year in Bahrain, I think most likely Lewis Hamilton or Fernando Alonso would win the race if that was to happen. So yeah, qualifying is the absolute key if you are a Ferrari fan. If you don't get pole, then yeah, it is pretty much all over, I think, for the Ferrari team, because quite clearly their tyre degradation issues on a long run and on a race run is still there. We saw it all through testing, on all 3 days of testing, and I think Ferrari know that it's an issue they're probably not going to be able to get over for the whole of the season. Maybe they can make it better during the season, but it is going to be probably their biggest weakness in 2023. So yeah, qualifying is a key for them, but even then, I don't think they're getting anywhere near pole position this weekend. And we'll now move on to the Mercedes-Benz team, who had a tricky, as I've talked about in the last few days, had a tricky pre-season testing, reliability issues on the day 2, some handling issues as well, which look to have been mostly ironed out. Also, a new rear wing is coming this weekend for the Mercedes team to cut off some drag, so they should be a bit faster this weekend than what they showed in testing compared to Ferrari, Aston Martin and Red Bull. But I think really the best they can do is a podium, I think, for this weekend's race. I would be surprised if Mercedes, all of a sudden had a quicker car than, say, everyone else but Red Bull, say, in qualifying, and then maybe contended for the win with Red Bull. I think, that type of showing out of the, them pulling that out of the bag would be a massive surprise. We know Mercedes, of course, do sandbag, and they do say some very, at times clever things to the media to not quite indicate as to where they truly are at times. But yeah, I think for this weekend's Grand Prix, I think a podium at best is what they're probably going to be getting. And I think they can get a podium. I think that's absolutely possible with this team. I mean, in qualifying, I don't think they'll be that slow compared to Ferrari. I think they'll probably be 3, maybe 4 tenths of a second off the pace of the Ferrari team, which is not that bad. And then, yeah, in the race, I expect Mercedes-Benz to be quicker than Ferrari, at least. Whether they're faster than Aston Martin, who showed some spectacular pace on their long runs, we'll have to see how the FP2 long runs go. Because, in practice too, we do get, of course, a bit of a better indication as to what the pace on the long runs will actually look like, or most likely look like, I guess you could say, in the race itself on Sunday. So, yeah. But I think they're definite podium contenders. I think if I was to compare it to the Bahrain Grand Prix last season, where, of course, they weren't very quick at all, still ended up on the podium, but that was only because of the 2 DNFs for the 2 Red Bulls. I think the only thing I could say as a positive for Mercedes is that at least this weekend, if they do get a podium, it's probably going to be because they had the pace to get the podium, when last season it was really out of just having better reliability than Red Bull at that part of the season. So if they can, on pure pace, get a podium and obviously beat Aston Martin and Ferrari, then I think that'd be a good first weekend. Because, I mean, yeah, they've not got the car, I don't think, this season to fight for the championship. I think that's pretty clear to see. Obviously, I predicted that they would have the car to fight for the championship, and that's not the case. But really, for this season, if Mercedes are going to get to a point where they are back to fighting for championships and race wins on a consistent basis, they just need to make sure from now on that they keep making progression and are at least doing better than they were, at the same racetracks a year ago. So, yeah, progression is all that matters, I think, at this point. And like I said, getting a podium this weekend on pure pace rather than reliability would be a step forward. So, yeah, it'd be nice to see Mercedes get a podium on pure pace, because at least then we'd know if they do develop as well as they did during the course of 2022, we would know then that towards the end of the season, things would get much better for this team. And finally, before we move on to some data and my predictions for the weekend, before we get onto the midfield, of course, let's go on to what very well could be the fourth top team in Formula One, which is Aston Martin. And yeah, their pace in testing, as I got into, was very, very good. Their pace was, we expected it to be a lot better than what we saw this time last year and even at the end of last season. They were the team that were most likely going to be making the most progress in 2023. But I didn't expect this, and I don't think anybody expected this. And yeah, Alonso, in his long runs on the final day of testing, was going as quick, if not quicker, than Ferrari were on the same compound of tyre. They were even going about the same pace, if not quicker, you could argue, than Mercedes were. Yeah, the pace was really quite special from Aston Martin, and I think they have definitely got something really good here. And I'm just very curious, once we get into practice, and, we get into especially the long runs that they do, normally the teams at the end of practice too on a Friday, I'm very interested to see whether they keep up that level of pace, because if they can, then yeah, we are in for a very exciting fight for 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th place as well. And just so you guys know, in case you don't know, this man on screen, Felipe Drugovich, who did testing alongside Alonso last week, will not be in the car for this weekend's Grand Prix. Lance Stroll has officially been confirmed to return this weekend. Good to see. Hopefully he can get back up to speed and be not too far behind Alonso this weekend, because, there is an Aston Martin car there that has a lot of potential, and we know, with the Aston Martin car showing great race pace, we know how great Stroll is in a race type situation. So if Stroll is at about his best level this weekend, then don't count out Lance. He could maybe spring a surprise as well. Let's not forget him. It's obviously not just Team Alonso, this team. But yeah, this is the team without a doubt to watch during the first Grand Prix of the season, and really the team to watch in 2023. It's going to be very exciting to see what they get up to in this Formula One season. And I think in a moment I'll just show what I think they'll be doing this weekend in terms of their pace, performance, and results. First, what I want to get into, though, is the sector time data from testing. Now, these sectors, it's the best Sector 1 times, Sector 2 times, and Sector 3 times from the final day of testing, where everyone, except I think for Williams, did their best time in testing. So let's get into that now. So in the first sector, which you guys will know is the long pit straight, then a slow turn 1 and 2, or a slow turn 1 and a, I guess, medium speed turn 2, and then you have another DRS zone going up to turn 4. What do you call it? Yeah, Red Bull are quickest, only just over Mercedes, which I think is promising to a certain extent for the Mercedes team. I think Red Bull were definitely holding back a bit with their say power unit and how aggressive they ran it on the faster laps in testing. Maybe not, as conservatively as Ferrari did. I think Ferrari were probably holding back slightly more than Red Bull were in terms of their, settings on their fast laps with the power unit. But I don't think Red Bull were holding back, or I don't think Ferrari, rather, were holding back much more than Red Bull. For Mercedes, though, we knew during testing that that they were running a high downforce rear wing. So for them to only be slightly slower than Red Bull in the first sector, in the best times in testing, with a quite a bigger rear wing that you would see more so at like the Spanish Grand Prix or even the Monaco Grand Prix, is pretty good. And obviously this weekend they are bringing a less draggy, slimmer rear wing. So don't count out Mercedes down the straights and in the first sector. I don't think they're doing that bad in those parts of the circuit. And then with Ferrari, 10th and a half down on Red Bull, I would expect in qualifying Ferrari will probably be faster, or at least right on the pace of Red Bull in the first sector. So yeah, I think Ferrari are holding back a bit, or not a bit more, slightly more, like I said, than Red Bull are with their power unit settings. But I don't think Ferrari are going to be, suddenly this weekend like half a second faster than Red Bull in Sector 1 or anything like that. I don't think Ferrari are sandbagging that hard. And then you've got Alfa Romeo in 4th. Alfa Romeo were obviously very quick on the final day of testing. And then Aston Martin and AlphaTauri did the same, best Sector 1 time. And then Williams were in 7th. A bit of a surprise that Williams were so slow in the first sector, because you would expect with, the qualities they had last season, they had a very slippery car. You'd think they'd probably be right there with Aston Martin, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri. But yeah, they're a couple tenths away, just ahead of Haas F1. And then McLaren are in 9th with Alpine in 10th. And yeah, I think with Alpine, who we don't know really anything about with their performance, I think this Sector 1 time is clear proof that Alpine were holding back from what they can absolutely do once we get to qualifying on Saturday afternoon. I mean, they did do their best time on the C3 compound compared to a lot of the teams who did their best time on the C4, but I don't think that equates for, a half a second nearly difference between Alfa Romeo and Alpine, for example, in the first sector. Alfa Romeo were on the C5 compound, but really, the C5 compound is not going to show its true extra grip until Sector 2, where all of the corners are. So, yeah. I think Alpine definitely have got a bit more to show than what they showed in testing. Let's now go on to Sector 2. So Sector 2 really is where, you make your lap in Bahrain. Not just because it's the longest sector of the circuit, but also because it is the most important. Very easy to make a mistake in Sector 2. I mean, Sector 1 is really all about grunt, and Sector 3 even is about grunt, when Sector 2 is legitimately about how good is your car handling through the corners. I mean, there is, you still do need some good power as well, because you have that third DRS zone just after turn 10. So I'm not saying that straight line speed is not important, but I think you catch my drift there. But yeah, Red Bull looking very good there. And Ferrari You can see in 5th place they were in Sector 2, third of a second away from the Red Bull team. Now, Ferrari, even though they did their best time on the C4 like Red Bull did, Ferrari were running a slimmer rear wing than you would do normally for this circuit, when Red Bull were running a rear wing that you would absolutely run for this track, a medium downforce rear wing, when Ferrari were a bit more on the lower side. Now, the only thing is with that, with Ferrari running that lower downforce rear wing, I mean, yeah, it would have hurt their performance to a certain extent in Sector 2, but not as much as people think in that middle sector. Because you have to remember, the two most important corners really in Sector 2 are Turn 8 and Turn 10, which are slow corners. And of course, you know, if you've got more downforce on your rear wing, that's going to help probably a lot more in the medium and high speed corners than it is the slow speed corners. Now, we were hearing after testing that there is a bit of understeer in this Ferrari car that is suiting Carlos Sainz a bit more than Charles Leclerc. If that is still the case this weekend, then that would probably explain why Ferrari are a third of a second off the pace of Red Bull in Sector 2. And again, remember, the best Sector 2 time done by Red Bull was done by Perez, when if Verstappen was in the car, he probably could have gone 2 to 3 tenths of a second quicker than Perez did. So yeah, the middle sector is where Ferrari are losing the time to Red Bull, and that's where they're going to be suffering the most. I think Sector 1 and Sector 3, it's going to be not equal between Red Bull and Ferrari, but pretty competitive. But Sector 2 is where Red Bull are just really abusing the Ferrari team, because Ferrari have not got the downforce on their car that Red Bull have. And that's why Red Bull have the best car here, in Bahrain at least. For Mercedes, their Sector 2 was good, I would say. 2 tenths of a second quicker than Ferrari. And I think if you view these cars purely through the lens of, grip and downforce, I think Mercedes do have probably better downforce than Ferrari do. I think the real issue at Mercedes is a lack of grunt from the power unit, but also their car does still seem to be a tad draggy, which is why they're not quite going as quickly down the straights as maybe they want to be really, truly competitive. But we do have to remember that, again, Mercedes in testing were running a higher downforce rear wing, which wouldn't have helped them, in every corner in Sector 2, but it definitely would have helped to a certain extent. But yeah, I think really Red Bull are quite comfortably the best team in the middle sector for the Bahrain circuit. And I think in terms of pure handling, I think Red Bull have got quite comfortably the best car on the grid. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I gotta say though, Alfa Romeo, I know they did their best time on the C5 compound, but very impressive for them to be as quick as they were there. 2 tenths of a second quicker than Ferrari in that sector. Again, I know Ferrari weren't running the most ideal setup, but very impressive middle sector from Bottas in testing. AlphaTauri not doing too bad. Haas F1 doing pretty well in that middle sector. I certainly think you'll see them pretty quick this weekend. Aston Martin down in 7th. Yeah, bit hard to know with them exactly where their pace is over a single lap. I think in a race situation, Aston Martin have got a good car. I just think in qualifying, we don't know for sure yet how quick it really is. I think it's probably at worst the 4th best car, but yeah, we don't know for sure yet, is the point I'm trying to make. McLaren look really bad in Sector 2. Half a second slower than AlphaTauri in that sector alone. And yeah, McLaren are going to be lucky, I think, to get both cars into Q2 this weekend. Alpine as well, not that quick in Sector 2. Actually, one thing I need to mention is McLaren and Alpine, of course, did their best lap times on the C3 compound, when, again, a lot of the teams did their best times on the C4. I guess for McLaren, actually, it's not too bad, because they would have been probably 3-4 tenths of a second quicker in Sector 2 if they were on the C4. And Alpine probably as well. But I still don't think McLaren are as quick overall as, Haas, AlphaTauri, or maybe not AlphaTauri, but Haas and Alfa Romeo, I think, are definitely faster than McLaren at this point. Because I don't think Haas and Alfa Romeo were necessarily showing absolutely everything they've got with their fast laps in testing. So, yeah. McLaren, they're not going to be horrendous this weekend, but they're going to be towards the bottom of the order in terms of the pecking order of teams. Alpine, there's definitely a bit more to show from them. And Williams, did pretty poorly in Sector 2. And they did, on the final day of testing, they did their best time on the C4 compound. So, no real excuses there for them. And then in the final sector, Red Bull quickest yet again. Alfa Romeo and Haas doing well there because I think really of the Ferrari power unit. Mercedes not doing too bad, I would say, in Sector 3. Ferrari, I think, they'll be a lot quicker in Sector 3 this weekend. Aston Martin doing okay. I guess the same could be said for AlphaTauri as well. A bit surprising again at Williams, having that lack of speed in a very high-speed sector, but maybe they are holding back a bit as well. We'll have to see, obviously, this weekend. But I think the takeaways I would have from this data is Red Bull, I think, for the overall track, have the best car for sure. In qualifying trim, I think Ferrari are going to be quicker than Mercedes purely because Ferrari have a lot more straight line speed. And we know here in Bahrain that's very important to your overall lap time, especially in qualifying. And then I think it's probably going to be Mercedes third, Aston Martin fourth. And then after that, you've got probably Haas, Alfa Romeo. I think Alpine are probably in there as well. And then the bottom three teams, probably AlphaTauri, McLaren, Williams. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but yeah, I think that's probably how it's looking going into this weekend's Grand Prix. Let me know if you think any different, guys, in the live chat or the comment section down below. But before I come to your comments in the live chat, let me show you my full predictions for this weekend's Grand Prix. Actually, before I do that, I just want to mention one thing. Obviously, this is the layout of the Sakhir International Circuit, if you don't know. The red is the first sector, the blue is the middle sector, and the yellow is the final sector. And like I said, first and final sector really is all about your top-end speed, which obviously Red Bull, Ferrari-powered teams really are the best at that, I would say. And then the middle sector really is all about downforce. When it comes to the main DRS zone for the circuit, which is down the pit straight, they have shrinked the DRS activation point during the pit straight. I think the activation point now is a bit closer to the start-finish line than it used to be, when I think it used to be literally just after turn 15. So they have shrunk it, and that means that overtaking won't be as easy into turn one as it was last season and as it has been in previous years, which I think is a good thing from the FIA, because with these cars and how well they follow now and how close the field is, I think it would be ridiculous if if the zone was as big as it was. What I'm hoping, though, is we start to see a gradual elimination of DRS. Honestly, I would probably next year get rid of the DRS zone between turn 10 and 11, which I don't think is really that useful. I mean, we do get overtaking with DRS down that straight, but not much. And if these cars still prove to be very easy to overtake in, then yeah, I think it's probably about time. Maybe starting this season, maybe starting next season, who knows? But I think it's about time we start to gradually eliminate the need for DRS. And yeah, I would like I said, to see one of the DRS zones be eliminated at this circuit, or say next year's Grand Prix, because I don't think it's really that necessary. But let me get into my full predictions, guys, for this weekend's Bahrain Grand Prix. So, in qualifying, and again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, qualifying, I've done predictions for the entire field. So I think it'll be Verstappen on pole, Perez second, a third of a second back, Leclerc third, 0.6 of a second back, with Sainz just behind him. Lewis Hamilton then, I think, will be in fifth, just ahead of Alonso in sixth, with Russell seventh and Lance Stroll in eighth place. And then completing the top 10, two drivers who were very quick in testing around this track, and also very quick in the past here in Bahrain, but especially last season, they were very, very quick. Kevin Magnussen, I think, will be ninth, with Valtteri Bottas in P10. And then outside the top 10, I've got Ocon and Gasly, 11th and 12th. Hülkenberg in 13th. I don't think he's going to have a great first Grand Prix back, Hülkenberg, to be honest. Zhou, I've gone in 14th. Norris, I think, will make it into Q2, but only just. Albon, I'm going 16th, with then Tsunoda and De Vries in the two AlphaTauri, 17th and 18th. Piastri 19th, and Logan Sargent in 20th. And yes, I do think McLaren will be 2.5 seconds off the pace, which means if there's no safety car during the Bahrain Grand Prix, they could be close to getting lapped 2 times at that type of pace. And it honestly, they deserve it, because they, by the looks of it, have produced a pretty bad car. And then here is my race prediction and my top 10. I think Max Verstappen will win the race from Perez second. Lewis Hamilton, I think, will finish in third. Yes, Hamilton, I think, will finish 35 seconds behind Max, who will win the Grand Prix. The predicted gaps, by the way, I've gone for those gaps if there is no safety car. And that's why the gaps, obviously, are so big. So yeah, Hamilton in third, 35 seconds off. Alonso just behind him. Leclerc quite a bit off in fifth place. I think Ferrari are going to struggle quite a bit with their race pace, which is why I think they'll have, quite a struggle in Sunday's Grand Prix. Russell will finish just behind Leclerc, with Carlos Sainz in seventh. Lance Stroll will not do too bad, but finish in eighth. I don't think he'll be quite on it this weekend. And then I think Magnussen will finish in ninth, and Bottas will finish in P10. So that's my prediction, guys. This weekend's Bahrain Grand Prix. Let me know in the live chat whether you agree or disagree. And yeah, I want to hear from you guys now to see what you guys have to say. So make sure to comment down below or in the live chat, and I'll get to your comments in a moment. Just want to say quickly, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because we have got so much content coming your way this weekend. Tomorrow I'll be live with a practice 2 watch along and a qualifying preview. I'll get to the exact times for those streams in a moment. And then on Saturday, I'm going to be doing a practice 3 watch along and the qualifying watch along. And in between those 2 F1 sessions, I'll be doing a watch along for the Formula 2 sprint race here in Bahrain as well. And then on Sunday, I'll be doing a race preview, race watch along, and reaction, of course, to what happens. And then on Monday night, we'll have a bit more of an in-depth review as to what happened in the Bahrain Grand Prix. So yeah, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. And for everyone watching right now, don't forget to smash that like button. But yeah, quickly, let me just get into what the schedule is. The next 2 pieces of content are coming up tomorrow. And yeah, I'll be live tomorrow at 2:45 p.m. UK time, 15 minutes before Practice 2 starts for the Practice 2 watch along. And then later on tomorrow at 8 p.m, I'll be live for a full-on preview of qualifying where we'll get into how all the teams did in practice, all of the data, and I'll probably give you another prediction for qualifying, to be honest, when we come out of Practice 2, because I'm sure we'll see some changes to the pecking order already from Practice 1 and Practice 2. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. And then, yeah, on Saturday, I'll be live from 11:15 in the morning all the way through till 4:30 in the afternoon. And like I said, on Saturday, you'll have Practice 3 watch along and then a sprint race watch along for Formula 2 in between that and qualifying, and then the qualifying watch along just after that, with also a reaction to the session itself. But let me just quickly have a look to see what you guys have to say in the live chat. And hello to all of you. Hope you're all doing well. Polish Eddie, Chazza, do you know if they're doing the press conferences today or tomorrow? They've already done it. They did it earlier today. Prank says Break F1 says something similar to you, Chazza, about Ferrari. Ferrari still bad on its tyres. Yeah, you can clearly see that from the data that Ferrari have bad tyre degradation, and that's going to be their Achilles heel. And you know what? With how competitive it is with Mercedes and Aston Martin there, and with how good Red Bull is, there's not a guarantee that Ferrari are going to win a race this season. I mean, I think they will, but it's not a guarantee. It's absolutely not a guarantee. So, yeah, I think really throughout the season, qualifying is going to be the key if they do end up getting a race win. Because if they normally start races this season around 3rd and 4th on the grid, then, yeah, winning a race is going to be pretty hard for them. Sayregar says, also don't know whether to really trust Aston considering they've been 7th the last 2 years. I think they're definitely going to be better than that this season. They've already shown us quite a lot. I mean, maybe, don't trust them to finish in the top 3 of the championship. I think you could absolutely say that. But yeah, I think they're definitely going to be top 5 at the absolute worst this year. Frank Trigg says Mercedes supply Aston with all the parts except the front end of the car, which Red Bull Bella Design Merc know what they have to work on now. Is that true? I don't know if that's true. If it is, then just, I don't know, post a link in the chat. Or let me know where I can find that, because I didn't know that about the Mercedes supplying Aston. Prank says, I hope AlphaTauri steps up this year. I was Jackie Chan confused last year about them. Yeah, it was a bit weird with them. They started last season with a pretty decent car, and they just, it fell off quite badly. They had actually a lot of Q3 appearances considering where they finished in the championship, but their execution rate was so bad which you have to say has been the case of that team for like a few years now. AlphaTauri really should have had like 2 top 5 Constructors' Championship results in like the last 5 years, but they just can't execute the results on a consistent basis. That's what cost them, especially in 2021. Mike Elliott said that Merc were going to run a smaller wing to increase their straight line speed this weekend. Yeah. Be interesting to see how much that helps them. Sakhir says this guy really thinks Stroll can get 8th. I mean, the car is good. The Aston Martin car is really good. So as long as he's like close-ish to his like proper top level of what he can do, I think it's absolutely doable. 8th place for Stroll. Menace One says, in a recent interview, Lewis said that Merc had a 1.5 upgrade for the W13 in Bahrain before the bouncing was discovered. Do you think they might have a 1.5 upgrade for the W14? Well, in Formula 1, normally we call them, B cars, where it's just a new car, basically. A new concept, maybe you could argue. Trigg saying Source Scarbs and Peter Winter talk about Merc supplying Aston. Okay. Well, if they're saying it, then it must be true, because obviously they know a lot about Formula 1. What was I going to say? Yeah. I mean, I think Automotor and Sport, who are very good at reporting information from Formula 1, I think they revealed during testing last week that Mercedes got a B car, or a 1.5 version, if you want to put it that way. They've already got one, apparently, in the wind tunnel, ready to go if this car is deemed insufficient, not good enough, whatever you want to call it. So if that is true, then we might see that new car probably in Baku, maybe. If not Baku at the end of April, then probably at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at Imola in like mid-May. Sparky Pete saying, I heard that front end comment on the Aston compared to Merc thing also. Yeah, it must be true. Yeah, I didn't know that. Maybe I should have, but I don't follow, to be honest, the technical side of these cars as much as maybe I should do. But yeah, I didn't quite know that. But I think I've gone through all the comments there, and I think I'll now move on and pretty much whiz through the rest of the teams. So let's go on to, not Aston Martin, let's now go on to the Alpine team, who, yeah, I guess you could say they're a dark horse this weekend, but we don't really know anything about them. We know that they're satisfied at the very least with what they've got. They have brought an upgrade to this weekend's race, which is great to see that they're already updating this car. But they seem to be pretty happy with what they've got. We've not heard any negative news out of Alpine. The car visually on track in testing looked good. So, yeah, I really don't know what to say with them. I mean, you saw it a moment ago, I predicted that they'll be just outside the top 10 in qualifying and the race as well. Because I think Haas and Alfa Romeo will be, super competitive this weekend at the head of that midfield pack. But I will admit, predicting where Alpine were going to be was very hard, because I don't really know where they are. I don't know if this car, compared to everybody else, is even better than last season and they pulled away from a lot of the midfield teams, or if they're more so in the midfield than they were last season, say more in the middle of the midfield. Yeah, I really don't know. It's really hard to say. So we'll see this weekend how they do. Again, drivers and teams seem pretty happy with what they've got. So we'll see tomorrow what they do. I'm really interested to see what they do. I mean, they said a couple of days ago their aim is still, with these upgrades and really this season, to close that gap to third. So you've got to imagine that Alpine have at worst got the 5th best car overall for the season. But again, we don't know. We'll see this weekend in Bahrain. That's all I can say, sadly, when it comes to them. And really, to a certain extent, with McLaren, that's all you can say. Because even though all we've heard out of them is negativity, and the drivers don't seem that happy, the team has said a lot of negative things about this car. They also didn't quite show us what they were truly capable of compared to, say, teams like Alfa Romeo, Haas and AlphaTauri. So we don't know for sure either where McLaren are. My best guess is that they are, say, at best, the 8th best team, maybe 9th, maybe the worst team on the grid. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure they won't be secretly one of the top few or top couple teams in the midfield. I don't think they're quite that good in 2023. But yeah, looking at testing, again, it's hard to know exactly why. Let's say they do turn out this weekend and for this season to be poor. I don't know yet why that is, because we didn't see any obvious handling issues on a consistent basis with this McLaren car in testing. So yeah, I really don't know. I think the only thing maybe we've seen so far is that they are lacking still a lot of straight line speed, and that will obviously cost them around tracks like this that are very high speed. But yeah, it's hard to tell with them to a certain extent just where they are. I hope they're a bit better at least than they've been saying and than where I predicted them to be for this season. But yeah, it's not looking good if you're a McLaren fan. There is no doubt about that. And yeah, I think they'll be, at best, maybe they could get both cars into Q2, but I think that they're going to do pretty well to do that. Because I think the midfield is looking really competitive and definitely more competitive than it was last season. So yeah, it's going to be a hard weekend for McLaren, no doubt about that. We'll now move on to the Alfa Romeo team, who, let me not go on to that. Sorry about that. Yeah, Alfa Romeo, a lot of good things have been said about them. Being talked up quite a lot in the media that they've got a pretty good car here. I think even certain people in the paddock predicting that they might be one of the top 5 teams in F1 right now with the car they've got. Obviously, how Alpine do this weekend will maybe shatter those expectations or boost those expectations. We'll see. But yeah, Alfa Romeo have definitely got a good car here. Like I said in my season preview, the only issue is, obviously, later in the season, because they don't have quite the money and resources to develop as other teams do, it's going to be hard for them to keep it up for the entire season. But in view of this weekend, I think they've got a good car. Obviously, Ferrari power unit really does help because it has been showing a lot of pace in the first and third sector, the Ferrari-powered cars. And compared to the other two, not the other two, the other Ferrari-powered team in the midfield, being Haas F1, I think the difference this season between those teams is that Alfa Romeo are going to have probably a better race car than Haas will. The reason, though, I've got Magnussen ahead of Bottas is because I don't think those race pace issues for Haas are going to hurt them as much this weekend as it will do at other tracks during the season. And as well, Kevin Magnussen is really strong around this track. So is Valtteri Bottas. And yeah, Bottas I think will be top 10 in qualifying and top 10 in the race. And then yeah, Zhou Guanyu I don't think will do that well here. I think he'll finish, I don't know, 2 or 3 positions outside the points. But yeah, I don't think he'll be in the top 10. I just don't think he, within himself in this car, has enough pace to be quite in the top 10. But watch out for Alfa Romeo because they might spring a surprise in qualifying because we know how quick Bottas can be over a single lap. Hearts F1 next up, and yet they've got a good car here as well. They looked pretty good, I would say, during testing, and Kevin Magnussen looked especially very quick in the Haas car on the final day of testing, and we know that Kevin is very fast here. Last season, he finished 5th at this Grand Prix. He qualified, I think, 6th here in 2019 and was 6th in 2018 as well. Yeah, Kevin has always been really quick here in Bahrain. So I think really from that midfield pack, he has got to be someone that is looked out for because he is absolutely in qualifying capable of a surprise. But yeah, I don't think you'll see Haas with both cars in the points because, again, I think Hülkenberg will struggle to get back up to the pace that he needs to in what is a very competitive midfield. So yeah, Magnussen, I think, is going to be the one relied upon, let's say, for this weekend's race if Haas are going to score some points. But yeah, Haas car looks good. I think they're going to have a better season. And I think they'll have a top 10 in qualifying with Magnussen and will score some points with Magnussen as well. With AlphaTauri, I mean, in testing, they showed some really good lap times, but I don't think, in comparison to teams like Alfa Romeo and Haas, I don't think they'll be quite that competitive. I think the big issue for them this season, as I got into my season preview, is they don't have like an absolute number one in this team. They have 2 drivers who have a lot to prove and 2 drivers who I don't think are necessarily capable of being like super quick drivers in Formula 1 on a consistent basis. So yeah, I think the AlphaTauri car has the ability to be a decent car this weekend and in qualifying maybe get near Q3, but I just think with these 2 drivers they've got, I just think they won't be able a lot of the time to really maximize the potential of the car, and I think that's what you'll see this weekend. I expect they'll probably go better in the race than they will in qualifying. As I showed earlier, I think in qualifying they'll get both cars knocked down Q1 but be a bit stronger in the race. They won't get any points or anything, but yeah, the driver lineup is probably their biggest issue, I think, for the season. Because at least last season they had Gasly, who a lot of the time in qualifying was still their number one and could show consistently good pace in qualifying, when this year, yeah, AlphaTauri don't necessarily have that. And finally, the Williams team. And yeah, some people, like Ted Kravitz, have been talking up Williams as having a decent car. I think they've probably got a better car, a car that is closer to the midfield than it was this time last season. But I don't think, with all the data and everything I've looked through, I don't think I've seen enough to suggest they're not going to be the slowest team on the grid. I think they're absolutely going to be the slowest team on the grid. So yeah, I wouldn't get your expectations up, too high if you're a Williams fan or an Alex Albon fan. Albon, as usual, will have a real big go at trying to get out of Q1. I think he'll get close, but he'll get knocked out. And I think Logan Sargent, the man on screen, will be most likely last on the grid in qualifying and probably the race as well. I think it's going to take a bit of time for Logan to get up to speed, really, with Formula 1. But yeah, Williams, I'm pretty sure, will have overall the worst car this weekend. But maybe not for the entire season. We'll see how it goes there. But I think I've gone through everything. And yeah, that's pretty much, guys, my preview for this weekend's Bahrain Grand Prix. Thank you guys for coming along to this stream. Been great to have you. and will be great to have you along for, of course, the content I'm bringing you this weekend. Again, a reminder of what I'm doing tomorrow. These times, by the way, are obviously UK time or GMT. So tomorrow, I'll be first live at 2:45 p.m. for the Practice 2 watch along. Make sure to come and join me to see just how quick the cars are on the first or closest representative session, obviously, to what we're going to see in qualifying. And then later tomorrow, on Friday, I'll be live again at 8 p.m. with a preview of qualifying itself, where we'll go through tons of data and come to the, best opinion we can of what's going to happen in qualifying on Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, of course, in Bahrain. So yeah, it'll be great for you guys to come along to that. And if you are new to the channel, again, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. Don't forget to smash the like button as well before you guys head off. Obviously, it does help the channel grow. And to keep up with content on this channel, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 and join our Discord server. In the description as well, I've got a link to 2 live streams that I did. One was earlier this week and one was on Sunday night. One of them is a full review of testing. So if you want to see all of the key data from testing and get a good idea out of testing what the performance looks like, make sure to go and watch that. And if you want to know my final absolute predictions for the season, make sure to go and watch the season preview, where I have got a couple, interesting predictions for 2023. So yeah, make sure to go check those out. Links below in the description, guys. But until 2:45 p.m. tomorrow for the Practice 2 watch along for the first Grand Prix of the season, the 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix, it has been me, Chazzer HD. Goodbye.